Right, good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here on the third day, 10 a.m., like she said. Thank you very much for the introduction and also for the nice screaming from the balcony to get everyone in here. Is just a quick show of hands. Who came because of the screaming from the balcony? Anyone hear that? No? Okay, well, that's what I do. I'm a data analyst, so we have the marketing people coming, doing stuff, and then I track what they do, and then I tell them it's not working. That's usually the case, right? Indie track, yet I'm from Ubisoft, Blue-Byte. Blue-Byte is a wholly owned studio by Ubisoft. Why that? Well, we kind of think ourselves as the indie within Ubisoft, so we're a tiny studio and embedded in the whole Ubisoft infrastructure, sometimes problematic. But what I'm going to talk about, retention here and systemic gameplay. See, already people are leaving the room, so it's fine. Haven't even started yet. Retention and systemic gameplay is, I think, interesting for everyone, right? Because this is what you will do in your games or in any games that you can see. So, topic is just retention. It's very simple. It's very easy. It's two parts. The first part is just briefly looking at some of the retention numbers and what we can do. So I'm a data analyst, so I look at models and data and maths, but it's not going to be scary, I promise. And the second part is looking at systemic gameplay ways that you can have content for all of your retention. Because if your retention is done right, you will have your players in your game for years and years and years, right? So you need to have a game that can run for years and years and years. A little bit about me and about Blue-Byte. Blue-Byte is very old. I think it's the oldest German game studio still in existence. Not quite sure about that one. Mostly known for the Settlers and the Anno brand, right? It was acquired by Ubisoft in 2001, so also ages ago. And our newest game is Assassin's Creed Identity, which is a mobile AC game, right? And it's only soft launched so far in Australia and New Zealand, but I hope to be able to tell you guys that you can download it worldwide soon. Me, I'm the head of game analytics at Blue-Byte. I'm an economist, right? So I don't really know what I'm doing. I have other people who do things for me, mostly programmers who do the games and marketing people who don't get in players. But I came into this by accident, sometimes by design, because I wrote my thesis actually on 3 essays on the economics of online games, and I thought, oh, okay, well, perhaps there are people out there who are looking for this kind of thing. And turned out, yes, there are quite a few. So, retention, engagement, drop-off, churn, there are tons and tons of words, tons and tons of things that people look at in the games to try and measure actually one thing. Do the players I get into the game stay, right? It's kind of what the pointy-haired boss here in the Dilbert comic does, so you can explain the universe with XKCD and Dilbert comics. And this one here basically says, well, if I have retention higher, then everything's better, right? But he doesn't really see that it's hard work to get the retention going and to get everything up and running. And if everything is done well, then you're supposed to be happier because you've got more players in your game. Why is retention important? A, you've got players, and if you've got a free-to-play game, or even if you don't have a free-to-play game and you want to sell more games in the future, then retention is monetization in a very simple sense, right? So revenues, total payments, total number of payments times the ARPPU. So if you split that up, you get the number of players times the average payments per user times the ARPPU, and the average payments per user, where is it, up here? This depends highly on your retention. So the longer you have your people in your game, the players in your game, the more they will pay in the end, right? If you want to optimize for conversion, that's only a small term, small scale, short-term fix. If you optimize for retention, that actually keeps just everything going and going and going. So first thing, retention is not churn. Luckily or happily, I've seen churn go away over the past years, right? The churn rate is, well, it will look something like this. It looks very scary, but the definition basically is something like, take the monthly active users you had 30 days ago, of these people, how many are still left today? Right, so if you've got a churn of 50%, half of the people you had 30 days ago are gone right now. So stop using that. It's a useless number. Why? First of all, it has a 30-day anchor in it. So this churn window has 30 days in it, and it moves 1 day each day, right? So if something happens on 1 day, you will only see 1/30 of the effect, right? And this goes on and on and on and on and on. And also, it's 30 days late, right? Because the monthly active users also is 30 days late, because you count the players that were in your game for the last 30 days. So the information is basically 60 days late, and it's very diluted and doesn't really help a lot. Right, there's a quick example I have over here. Let's just assume, again, I'm an economist, so that's what we do. There are only two types of players. The veteran players inside your game, and there are 900 of them, and your marketing team dumps in 100 every month, right? So the first of every month, they dump in 100 players, and these leave immediately, right? The resulting churn rate is then 10%. Now, what does this tell you? It really only tells you that it doesn't even tell you anything, right? So you take a look at which of these 10% are gone, whatever. So what do you want to do instead? You want to look at retention rather than churn, and retention is cohorts. Several people that came in at a particular point in time. You can have weekly, daily, monthly cohorts, it doesn't really matter. But it will look kind of like this, right? You start here with a lot of people, so basically 100% start the game over here, and as time goes on, or in this case, this is the player level, as player level goes on, more and more people will drop. Right. So you start at 100%, and then at the end you reach a certain point. What you can see here nicely is that these curves can look differently. Right. And the example I have here is from a game, Might&Magic Heroes Online. I'll do a little bit more on this game later on, but suffice to say, it's kind of an RPG right now. Right. And you can basically pick two classes, a Haven and a Necro class, and you can see here actually that the Haven class has a worse retention than the Necro class over there. So this was in the beginning of the game, so we looked at the numbers and you could really see, okay, these two differ very much from the game that was presented to them. So that's what you can look at over here. Taking this back to the real retention curves, that will look something like this. You've got the players remaining, and you've got the time, and you can see, okay, these curves will always go like this. There's usually always a strong drop on the first day, so I'm talking mainly about free-to-play games here. They have a very strong drop, but even HD games, so even games that you pay upfront for, will have a drop on the first day. And this can be relatively large even, to just have, it's strange, but even for Ubisoft, when you look at HD games, console games, people pay 60 euros for it, and yet they just play it for a single day. So there's a drop, and then there's a turn, where the curve sort of drops and then shifts outward. And the way that you can get a better retention is to have a steeper turn, right? So the whole curve stays up here and goes long and long and long, and it goes over there and then in infinity. So if you've got World of Tanks or other similar games, they have a curve that's basically flat, right? So it just goes on and on and on over there. So what can you do over here? The green line actually is real data. So the data from Might&Magic Heroes Online, from one of our games. And then you can set up some models that try to predict this retention over here. These are two. One is a log uniform model, the other is a power law model, and you can see the blue one is actually quite a bit better, and you try and find out, okay, well, what's the best ones over here? How does this work? And once you can predict these numbers here with this model, you've actually got your retention figured out, and you know, okay, well, the players that went in on day X will be in the game for Y amount of time. And when this reaches 0 here, we call this the vanishing time, your entire cohort will be gone. Right? And the goal is, of course, to move that as far out as possible. And then you can compare several cohorts. So even in the same game, these can change, right? So one cohort can be better than the other. Usually you would look at different weeks or days. Then usually the changes are in the marketing mix. So that's one of the things that the marketing people here do at our company and in many, many other companies as well, and all the marketing professionals that you see out there will tell you, oh, we can do this perfectly and it works well and everything else. Don't trust them. Is that the better the players are, the longer they will stay in the game. And better in this case means the better the fit for the actual game, right? So if I do a marketing campaign for, let's take Might&Magic Heroes Online again, this is an RPG style game, and I show videos and texts that says, okay, well, this is a shooter game and you run around with tanks and weapons and guns. Of course, I will get more players in it because the shooter and World War II genre is relatively large, but they will just drop out of the game the very first second because they see, okay, this is not my game, right? So be honest and be upfront with your players over here. But cohorts can also be different things. So these are just 3 different game regions that we have for our game. And you can see that the blue line, which is the Russian Might&Magic Heroes Online, actually has a better retention, right? So the game works better in Russia. Not as surprising if you know that the Heroes brand, the Might&Magic Heroes brand, is very well known and very popular in Russia. So this is actually one of our strongest markets. What I showed you so far, so the retention curve that drops down and then turns to the right, is the overall retention. If you look at your paying users, this will look slightly different, right? So the retention curve of those actually starts at the top, and for a very long time, this doesn't drop, right? Why? Because the paying users are they are your fans and they really like your game. That's the reason why they actually pay the money, right? And you can use the model over here to sort of, this is the same power law model to model these things. And later on, this is just for me, you then check the model with your data. So the blue line was the actual data up to a certain point. Then we made the model prediction with the red line, and the green curve is then the actual data if you look a couple of days afterwards. And as you can see here, okay, well, the model was kind of sort of okay, but not really that great. So it works better for the overall retention, actually. So, so much for all retention. Like I said, drop churn. You don't want to look at churn anymore. You really want to look at retention. One thing, perhaps as a side note, in mobile, everyone's fussing about the 1 day, the 3 day, the 7 day, and the 30-day retention. This actually isn't too bad, right? Because the 1 day retention gives you the drop. That's usually a fixed number. And with the 3 and let's say the 7, possibly also the 30-day retention, you can nearly perfectly predict the churn of this curve afterwards. Right? So the first day gives you the drop, and then with 2 to 3 data points, you can actually predict the form of the curve over there. So that's something that works really well. If you, as an indie developer, don't want to do these model calculations, some of them can even be done in Excel, right? So there's a power law model in Excel which can predict that. I'm sure that there are lots of companies out there that would just love to do that for you. Not that I condone any of that. So, but Might&Magic Heroes Online, this is now perhaps a little bit more interesting. These are some gameplay elements that you can put into the game. So the problem with retention is, or not the problem, if you have a good retention, players are in your game for a long time, at some point they will reach an understanding of the game, and if you don't have systemic gameplay in your game, they've basically used up the content. Right? And this is something that happened to us, and I want to perhaps give some insights for this. So Might&Magic Heroes Online is the online version of the traditional Heroes franchise. Right? I don't know if anyone, so who has heard of the Heroes franchise? Right, so most have heard. It is a fantasy turn-based hex field combat, right? Tactical combat. The online version, of course, goes into a little bit of well, you can be turn-based in online. That's going to be very, very boring. So we have a world map where you run around in real time, and when you enter the battles, you've got the hex-based, turn-based combat again. Now, Blue-Byte has always been very strong in strategy, so we make strategy games. That's what we like. Kind of a German company, so you really we make games with lots of numbers, and they're very boring and very German sometimes for other people. But I like them. That's okay, right? And we weren't very strong back then when we started this in role-playing games in RPG. So this is just an image of how this looks like. You are one of these, and you run around on the map. And then if you enter combat, it looks kind of like this. So you've got the hex field, and you've got some obstacles running around, and you've got your units here, you've got the enemy units there, and then you just fight it out. So one of the things that we noticed, or one of the things that when we started, is we took a Heroes game, made it brand loyal, as our marketing people like to say. And it turned out that it wasn't that well suited for the online market. Why? Because it's a content monster. You add content, and your players play it, but they will play it far faster than you can add new content. Right? And this was the problem that we faced. The retention, so the people, the players liked the game enough, they were clamoring for more and more and more, but they reached the end of the content relatively quickly, and we didn't have a lot of things in place to keep the players happy, to keep them inside the game once they've reached the first weeks or days of content. And we went into building more and more systemic content. So what is systemic content? It's content that you can reuse again and again and again with relatively little work on your side, right? So if you think of, I don't know, if you think of Candy Crush, the content is actually very simple. They've got the match 3 thing, but they add the meta game on top where you run around and you're actually happy to do the same thing again and again and again. And that's what you want to have here. You want to make the player happy doing the same thing again and again and again. And I have 2 examples here. One is the challenge map, and the other are forgotten sites. So challenge maps are procedurally generated content maps. You start with an initial level of troops, and the challenge is to get as far as you can with those troops that you bring with you. And the further you get, the higher the rewards and the items that you get. So it kind of looks like this. You will start here somewhere, and then you've got a couple of battles over there, and what you see over here. So all of this is procedurally generated. So it will look different every time the player enters one of these dungeons. And this is important because the fights itself work. They're nice, they're fun. But if you do the same battle again and again and again, this will get boring pretty quick. But with a setup like this, you actually have a dungeon that looks different every time the player goes in, and then they enter the loops and they want to have more rewards and more content. They enter the map again and again and again. So this fixes one of the problems of needing to generate more content all the time. The next thing are co-op rights, and this is actually interesting, and I really like this feature. We've separated the map and the content, right? So what we do is we have a number of maps. So this is just basic look of the game and where the players can run around, which are cycled through. So every time the player starts the co-op raids, you pick one of these maps at random, and there's a random perk setup. Basically means you populate the map with things, so with battles, with obstacles, with whatever else you have. So you pick one of these at random, you pick one of those at random, so the combination of that will be the challenge that the player faces. And the good thing here is, if we add new maps here and if we add new perks here, this will explode the set of possibilities for the player itself. Right? So this is, so this was really the thing that got us going. In the end, is we can generate this content, not cheaply, but at a reasonable price, and if we add it, it actually has an exponential effect. So every new perk setup that we put in will generate n times the amount of combat possibilities. So right, let's just have a quick picture here. This is an example. So the background here is the map. This is what it looks like. So you can walk around here, you can walk there. Then there's a tree over here, a little farm over there, and each of these little dots or asterisks here is what we call a perk setup. The crosses are battles. You've got some other things here. You've got some hearts and everything else. The battles also have different setups. So one battle might be strong against archers, one battle might be strong against magic heroes, one battle might be strong, and so you kind of have a mix of things going on here. And if you rotate things, right? Okay, you can't really see this that well, right? But these are actually different perks over here. So if you really squint your eyes and you try and find out what's happening here, or later on you download the slides, this will change over there. Right. So I'll skip this part and leave you at the content at the contact page. So if you have any questions, please feel free, of course, to email me. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm even on Twitter. I have posted a single tweet in my life. So you may or may not want to follow me. I don't know if it's at least I won't spam your inbox, right? And I might get up to posting more stuff on Twitter in the future. Right. Questions?
Thank you so much for your presentations, first of all. Okay, guys, so do you have any questions? No? Okay, I'll ask. Can you please tell what tools is better to use to collect data?
You will want some kind of event-based tracking system. Now, which of that, I couldn't really tell. We have our own in-house custom solution, which is a luxury, of course, since it's Ubisoft, so we have a lot of tools running around. But this particular tracking solution was actually made in-house by us, because when we went into the free-to-play and into the online game world, Ubisoft didn't have tools that were suited, so they were focused on consoles. So we built our own tracking things, which you may or may not want to do. There are lots of other tools out there which allow you to track data and to take a look at it. The question that you should ask yourself is, okay, well, how much am I going to use this data? Right? If I want to make a big business out of it, to look at the data and also to optimize marketing and whatever else, you may want to have a tool that allows you to keep the data, right? Because if you outsource the tracking tool, you will often have the data running through third-party companies, right? Or always have data running through third-party companies, some of which will keep the data. And if you want to switch out the tool for something else, you've basically lost your history. So this is something that you want to keep in mind. Other than that, I guess that most of you are in the mobile space, right? Mobile is a big thing currently. Problem with mobile is you will have client tracks, and client tracks always suck. Right? So never ever trust your client track data. Everything that's server side, so everything that you can manage yourself, that's good, that's great. But client tracks, you know.
Okay, one more small question. So usually indie developers, to increase their retention, they work with their communities. But you didn't mention anything about this. Do you is it work with communities of your game is a big part to increase retention?
Yes, so this is something that we do a lot as well. We have forums, we have CRM people, we have customer support people, Twitter, we have Facebook pages, we talk to the people.
What's the best for indies? What we should focus? Start with
It really depends on your game, right? So if you have a mobile game, it might be difficult for you to set up a forum community, but it might be easier to have an Instagram chat or whatever else. Talking to your customers is always a good thing, and it's a good idea. And we usually take what the players are saying and look at the data and then say, okay, well, is this true or not? if it's true, then great. So we fix things or we change things. If it's not true, we still need to change things because the perception of the players is that something isn't working or that something is working great. So that's something that we keep in mind as well.
Thank you. Anyone has more question? Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
He was first. Then.
Short question. Do you have any papers published after you started working on the games?
No. Right. So it's when you start working, it gets kind of complicated to publish papers. So the link I had in the beginning, I might add one or two later. I'm currently talking with someone where we might want to set something up. But people who've worked in academia will know that setting up a paper is a lot of work, and it gets published 1 to 10 years after it's finished, basically, right? So it goes through peer reviews and everything else.
What tools do you use to read your tracking events, your data? You use Excel or other tools you use?
Yeah. So I pride myself of having an Excel-free office. But that doesn't count for the entire office, that only counts for my department. We use mainly R. R, which is the letter R, is an open source statistical software package. You can do what I love R, and it's great that I can talk. I can stand there and I can talk for days on it, right? And I can do a tutorial and whatever else you want. It has a pretty steep learning curve, but you can do whatever you want with it, right? And we also use it to export the data we have. So the data are in databases. We have Hadoop, and we've got MySQL and everything else. You can export the data even to Excel sheets. Because if we give data to our game designers, to managers, everything else, they want Excel sheets. There's nothing that you can do about that. So we export the data to Excel sheets. But we, as data analysts, we don't touch Excel.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Unfortunately, we don't have any more time for the questions. But if you want, you can catch Christopher in
I'm here the whole day.
And thank you so much for the great presentation.
Thank you very much.
And the next session will